Ladies and gentlemen, we are in the presence of Mr. Andrew Stanton, a bona
What's up,
fide
folks?
great guy, incredible musician, virtuoso, and I'm
All right.
super excited for him to be here. You know that we're talking about guitars. Let's
Put
let
your hand.
everybody
Put your hands.
in. I'm going to play a little music and then we'll get into it. Here we go. Andrew, thank you for being here. You know that we really value. I'm going to let you take it away. Again, thank you for your time.
Thanks, guys. How's everyone doing today? Collective good, everybody? Cool. Awesome. I've got this little angular setup today so you can see when I get on the mic in a sec. So if I'm not making eye contact, that's why I'm not ignoring everybody's presence here. Anyways, hope you're doing well in whatever parts of the world you are tuning in from today. We've got on the schedule a little look at recording acoustic instruments. How many of you guys, if you click the button or put your hand up, record acoustic guitars or ukulele or anything? Yeah, probably all of us. Good. That's a good answer. It's a universal truth of good music is that acoustic guitars involved at some point. Even great hard rock and metal songs will write them on acoustic first, right? A lot of the time. So one of the things about recording that I've learned about recording acoustic this year is just how to sort of differentiate between the type of acoustic parts that I'm going to record. I sort of grew up in that like church youth group worship world when I was starting out in music. And so acoustic guitar sort of serves one purpose, right? It's really strummy and very like, rhythmically, it's like the base for everything that you build around. And that's totally awesome. That's like, all the 90s hits are that way. I think it's really consistent throughout music history, rock, pop, whatever. So that was sort of the starting point for me. Okay, you mic up an acoustic and you strum, but the different things that I've gotten into the last couple years have really forced me to try new things. So I thought I'd share some of that. And just for reference, working with that company I've mentioned before, Soundstripe. Wow, sorry. How many times can you hit pause and it still plays? I don't know. At least that many. But working with Soundstripe the last year, I have done some acoustic tracks that I released as Ends of the Earth. Artist name, you can look it up on streaming. So I've got some songs like this one. Some more Western picky stuff. And we got some of this. And then I've got some more open stuff. Oh, internet didn't like that one. Check this one out. There we go. Fingers. So all those examples are mixed, but they've all been recorded with the same acoustic guitar right here with the same mic. So showing you a couple things I do on the way in and on the way out. We'll learn about the difference in sound that we can create. So I've got a session to share with you right here for something new that I'm just really starting on. So I don't have much in here other than a few examples. So first question, can you guys see these plugins that just popped up? No?
Not yet. Not yet.
Dang. Okay, hang on.
I think
Might have to open them.
I could be wrong. I think you have to share the desktop as opposed to the program. I think.
Oh yeah, no, you're right. That's a great idea. It's they're from a different application, so let me just do that real quick. Thank you, Eddie. So right here, we've got a LA2A type compressor and a 610B channel strip. Have you guys used anything like this before? Definitely cool. So these are really like, yes, industry standard pieces of gear or plugins now. And so what I've got is on the way in from my compressor microphone or condenser microphone right here. It's a Rode NT1. Definitely a great buy. I think they cost, $300 to $400. They're super quiet, great on vocals, really good on acoustic instruments. It's kind of like a clone of a U87 vintage mic. And what we've got on the way in is just a little bit of treatment with the compressor and then some EQ on this preamp. So I'll show you 3 different things. First thing is this example right here. And so that's no plugins active on the master bus, nothing. That's just exactly what I've recorded off the mic. Sounds pretty good already, right? This is not an expensive acoustic. I was just telling Eddie this guitar is like a Fender Bubinga wood acoustic guitar that I've had for 10 years. It's just kind of like a run-of-the-mill wood acoustic, nothing insane. And so what I've learned from using these plugins that I had pulled up there is that when I'm doing a part like this, the EQ that happens right here is important. So if you guys are not using anything with unison plugins that you can have active as you're recording, this might not be something that applies to you directly, but it's something really important to keep in mind because eventually you will, whether it's with your interface or if you're using outboard gear. And at the end of the day, we're just trying to do not anything like a mix would do, to the signal on the way in. We're just trying to give the little containment treatments and sort of the like guiding tone that we want to get from the instrument as we're coming in. We'll do all the extreme stuff later on the back end when we can, listen and check and make sure this is all being printed real time. So we're committed, like we can't get out of it. So we've got just a little bit of gain being added and a little bit of peak reduction for that slight compression and slight tonal characteristic. But over here, I'm cutting 3 decibels of the low end. And the reason I'm doing that in the example that we've got right here is because I'm using a felt pick to pick through these chords. And you guys can still hear that okay?
Yeah.
Great. And if I haven't talked to you guys about it before, this is kind of my cheat code, these felt picks, to get around having to use my fingers if a finger picking part is difficult. That takes a long time to record, right? You have to get a perfect take. It has to really, you can't really edit your way in and out of finger picking on acoustic. So to save time, I started using these felt picks because they have a deader, thuddier sound like a finger, but I can use it the same way I'm used to using a pick. And they have a lot of darkness inherently. They don't have that like bright sound that a normal pick does. So by cutting some of the low end on the way in, I'm going to get around having to cut it out later on the back end. And then I'm adding 1.5 decibels of high end. And you can see right here, the low end that I'm cutting is around 200 hertz, and the high end I'm adding is at 7K. I am not adding much drive or level right here. This is all just pretty much straightforward. You know what? That is the truth for when I'm strumming on this track. Actually, what I did here was on the with the felt pick was I added some more high end right here. So just by clicking this up, I've doubled the amount of 7K. So I did that. And then also notice how the sound waves here and here are pretty much the same amplitude, right? What I did is added 5 decibels of this like tube preamplifier gain for this finger picking signal, and then took it off for this one. And I loaded the preset for that one. So those are the two little changes I made between this and this, using a normal traditional pick.
That's a big thing.
Say that again.
That's just a big change. Really quick, somebody's asking if you can speak a little bit to which preamp that is, and is this how you handle the spikes and transients by using this specific chain? Like, how do you deal with? So there's twofold question. Yeah.
No, that's a great question. Yeah, this LA2A will definitely help control some of the input transients, right, as it's coming in. So it'll keep everything from getting really crazy. You can see some spikes like down here. All right, so that's going to just happen naturally. And then over here, where I've got on the preamp the tube amplifier with 5 extra decibels, the natural lower volume that you're going to get from picking slowly versus strumming using a felt pick instead of a traditional pick, I'm going to make up for some of that with that function. So these are both running at 0, so this is just right off of the mic. So just understanding that you've got a different type of part being played, you're going to want to adjust accordingly here, bringing the high end back down for the strums, bringing the amplifier down. Otherwise, you're going to be peaking because what the microphone's receiving from the player is a higher output, right? It's busier, it's louder, it's more crisp. And the last thing I wanted to show you...
Wait, what preamp is that?
Oh, sorry. It's the Universal Audio 610B.
Is it emulating anything famous? Or is that it? Is that what it is?
That's it. I think it's a semi-famous thing there. They had a 610A and a 610B hardware unit that were both used on the old UA consoles that looked like this. So it was like every channel looked like that. Yeah. And so they make a great piece of hardware if you're using this setup every day for stuff called the it's the 1176 610. So it's like got a physical preamp like this in the same unit as an 1176 compressor, which would be, you could use it in a similar way. And those are both, famous Universal Audio pieces of gear. So I'm sorry?
You said it's the 610 and the 610B. Those are the two preamps.
Yes. Yeah, they've got a 610.
But if you don't have a UAD, you probably can't get those plugins anyway.
Yeah, they might make them third party, but yeah, basically these plugins live in my hardware interface. So they're active in an application outside of Pro Tools, which is why they weren't showing up that first time I clicked on them. So using Unison plugins as you're recording, again, different philosophy. It's like light treatment, but it's important because you can really get a good committed sound. It's like getting a head start on your mix, right?
Yeah.
Same thing with vocals, of course.
Right.
And
I have one really quick question about the LA2A. I'm always like a little hesitant to use it because like I can find out the gain reduction because of just turning the knob, but like the makeup gain is where I'm always like, do you just do that by ear or do you, because like the numbers don't really match up with, you know what I'm saying? Like you can look at the meter and see how much reduction's coming, but then it's like 10, 20, 30, 40, 50. I'm like, how do I know how much to make it back up, or is that just something you do by ear and like
it is definitely an ear thing for me. Jump over here and I'll actually play. What I want to do is play each one for you and I'll bypass it.
Okay, great.
So again, the mic I've got for the guitar is a Rode NT1, and I'll go ahead and mute this that I'm talking into for a minute.
Really quick, what kind of UAD interface are you using? What's the model? Is it a Twin, Apollo?
It is the Apollo Twin, yeah. So I think these are included in everything. If you get the hardware interface, you don't have to pay extra for these. This is part of like the base level package. And
I'm sorry, go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say anything similar to this. Pro Tools has an interface with Unison plugins now where you can run as you track. Anything similar to this will get the job done. Third-party stuff, like it doesn't have to be this brand, right?
Gotcha. So I just want to be clear to some of the beginners out there. So he's using plugins to kind of pre-amplify and pre-treat the audio so that when it is recorded, it just sounds better. It sounds richer. It sounds fuller. This can also be done with hardware, but this is just his workflow. He's using plugins in another software interface, and it's going into Pro Tools, and it's being recorded that way. Anyway, just wanted to throw that out.
Yes. No, thanks for clarifying.
Essentially, Andrew, when you are recording the guitar, though, you would always record the sound through some sort of preamp and compressor at the same time. You'd have both of those running when you're recording guitar.
Yes. Yeah. Basically, my acoustic is getting played into the microphone, and then it is first hitting this LA2A for, again, just mild treatment, which I'll turn it on and off in a second so you can hear it's just a little bit of coloring. And then lastly, it'll hit this preamp before it comes into Pro Tools. Yeah. Thanks for clarifying, Eddie.
Yeah, thank you.
Go over that.
No, thank you.
All right. So here, I'll play a couple chords with everything on, and then I'll bypass the compression, and then I'll bypass the EQ.
That's a difference, all right.
Definitely.
Yeah, so some noticeable things there. Like, I don't know about you guys, but what I hear when I turn the compressor off is the strings rattling. And it's not really, again, supposed to change the sound of the guitar. The point of these Unison plugins, tracking or having them, printing in real time to your recorded audio is not to have it sound mixed, but it's so that you've got the best version of the source sound. Like if you've got a singer, the compression and EQ is treating it so that the quiet nuances of the dynamic performance get through, right? Same idea here. They come through, loudly enough that they're not too quiet, and that the big parts, like you're talking about, the transients, the peaking, is controlled. But yeah, we're not really changing the identity of the instrument or the performance, but we're just getting it to sort of be guided, along the way. Like this, eventually we want it to get here. This is the head start. This is getting it on the right path. And so what I'll do is listen to a few takes as I'm writing and recording and see what I need to do, because something as simple as a different key can really change what you're talking about on an acoustic guitar. Electric guitar, not really. The amp, especially with distortion, I mean, it's all coming through this, sort of thin funnel of distortion and everything. So if you move up a couple frets, there's not a whole lot that changes. But on an acoustic guitar and other acoustic instruments, having things like open strings have a completely different frequency range and response than if you've got a capo on it, or if you're playing bar chords versus open chords. So keep in mind that a song in E, you might need to cut more low end if the low E string is like booming a bunch. And then for a part that's more of a lead on the higher strings, you might actually need to add a couple. this is 1.5 decibels that I've got here, that I would do on the low end. So it's really, again, about listening to the part, but that's the idea. I'm not trying to cut all the low end out so that I'm stuck, then I'd be stuck later if I needed some, but just getting myself a head start for when I'm going to go do the mixing stuff. Any questions on there before we move on?
Super beginner question.
That's okay.
Just to clarify. So if you were using actual hardware preamp, you would have the microphone in that first, then through the interface, and then into a compressor that was maybe a plug-in. Like that would be okay.
Almost. I think what you would do, and I've never had hardware in my studio outside of like guitar amps and stuff, but I think what you would do is run the microphone through the compressor and the preamp and then convert it to digital, because you'd want all those treatments to happen to the analog signal. So what this interface does is it sort of mimics having a hardware rack in your studio where on the way in, like my microphone cable is running into this interface, it's being turned into this new treated sound with a compressor and preamp, digital plugin, and then that digital signal is coming into my computer and hitting Pro Tools. So I think if you had the hardware, you'd want to run the mic right into it. Does that sound right with everybody else that's tried it?
Yeah. I mean, I guess I've used a preamp with vocals before, like a hardware preamp, but not with guitar. So, and we ran it through, microphone went directly into the preamp.
Yeah. I think that makes the most sense to me. It's, again, one of these things where it's like you can do it a bunch of different ways, and I've heard different philosophies. At the end of the day, you're getting a more like pure, original, organic sound if it's analog, right? But if you have to convert it to digital more often to like get it, analog in to digital and then digital to analog out to get processed and then back to digital. Every time you convert it, it's like degrading a little. So at what point is it still worth it, I guess? Especially when the plugins sound so good. It's more of a financial question than anything. It's cheaper to buy an interface with a lot of awesome plugins built in, right? But I'm sure that when you've got the right...
Yes, sir.
I'm sure when you've got the right approach working with that outboard gear, that's magic. I mean, that's, every good record that we all love was made that way, right? So, yeah.
Let me get one more in, if that's okay.
So Andrew, what about like positioning? Like how are you positioning like the guitar versus mic?
Thank you. That was actually going to be my next thing. So I've got the guitar there, and then I'll play it for you real quick. Little ukulele, the only other acoustic instrument I've got currently in here. All right, so you've seen me pick up the guitar, and now we'll go for that, and I'll show you the positioning that I choose.
Where'd he go?
Am I still in?
No, we lost your vid.
Hang on.
Angelina, as he's doing this, you had a question about the mic, right? I just want to be clear because I wasn't sure if I understood it. When you're ready, no rush.
Sorry, just give me a sec. The camera that I had clicking back to it doesn't want to show up. Try this again. Just darkness. Okay, let me just pull the mic over here. Hang on.
I'll just take a quick moment then because I'm really excited about some news. While you're doing that, it won't take very long. So guys, HF Music just got a paid opportunity if you're interested in it. As soon as I'm done with the call, I have a meeting, and it's for My Music. It's a paid opportunity. The deadline is this Sunday. I just wanted to throw that out there for those of you that are interested. I don't have any other details, but they will be on the site within 1 hour after we're done. Okay, thank you.
Okay, so here we go. And I like to use a stool recording acoustic just because for like the leg positioning. And what I've got here is a just like regular straight stand that I can get sort of close to. And what I like to do for this mic and this guitar is put the capsule pointed right at the sound hole. Now, in the past, I've used, if some of the more advanced guys out there have used KM184s, these little Neumann microphones. They're really good on acoustic guitars. They actually sound best pointed at the 12th fret. And I would have never thought to try that in my whole life, but mathematically, it's the middle of the string, so apparently that's the most resonant point. And the way those microphones pick up signal, they have plenty of low end without being pointed at the sound hole. So you can have them maybe a little higher up and point it directly at the 12th fret. So that's a technique you should try with your microphone to see if you like it. It's a chimier sound, right? Not so full-bodied and warm. As positioning it over here. So small differences, but definitely things you should try. And so if I'm strumming, I'll give myself about this much. Try to just sit in the same position, leave the mic and the stool. Instead of using my chair wheeling back and forth all the time, I use the stool. It doesn't move so that I know I'm in the right spot, right? That way I could get up, do a take, come back. I'm sure we've all been there, right? Like, wait, where was I holding this thing? Now, if I'm doing that finger picking or felt picking thing, I'll try to get a little bit closer. So instead of that like 5 or 6 inch gap, I'll go for 2 or 3. And again, with those other microphones, going to the 12th fret for this kind of thing sounds a little thinner and chimier like this. And with the felt pick, and if you wanted to strum with this thing, it'd be kind of cool, actually. I don't know if that's something that we want to go for, really, but it's different.
What application would you? Sorry to interrupt. What application would you use that, like strumming with a felt pick? What would be some ideas? Just curious.
I don't think I've done that yet. The only thing that I have used it to strum with is this uke. Only use that on guitar for kind of reproducing that finger picking, right? Or like that, dark tone picking so that the strings aren't so bright and shiny. But really where I got introduced to the felt pick was for this thing. And so I just try, can you guys hear that okay? I just try to use this in the same way, a couple inches from the mic, nothing too close. I'm monitoring my input the whole time, of course. But if I give the preamp that boost at the top, the sort of like emulated tube preamp, now I've got 5 more decibels. So it's going to come through and record a little stronger. And so the point of these are to sort of sound kind of cute, right? Like sort of chintzy. This is not like a really nice uke, but it's a cool texture to have because a lot of times when you're using acoustic instruments in songs, especially with guitar, it's like you probably have one acoustic guitar. You're going to pile up 10 or 12 different tracks with the same guitar. This can do a higher voiced part. And because it has nylon strings, it'll sit in a completely different place in the frequency spectrum, so it blends with your acoustic guitar parts in a cool way. And I think this was $60 at Guitar Center. It's not like a big investment, but it'll be something sort of cool, something kind of off the beaten path, right? And you don't have to
Fender uke.
This is Mitchell, which is like the Guitar Center brand.
Nice.
Yeah.
What's the pickup pattern on the mic? What pattern are you using?
I don't have a selectable pattern on this. It's a single direction, right?
Okay.
It picks up in front. I'm not using it's the Omni pattern that picks up the figure eight. Is that right? I forget the terminology now. I'm not using anything fancy like that. It's just coming straight down here. But it is a condenser, so it's active. It's using phantom power to sort of suck in sound from all around the room, or in this case, all around whatever's in front of it. The mic that I'm talking into is a dynamic mic, so I have to have a lot more gain, right? Like the mic sensitivity is way higher, so that the input would be as much as an active mic like that. Does that kind of answer your question on the positioning, at least, just getting sort of that like standard width there?
100. Thank you.
Cool.
Everyone's making jokes on the comments here about this kind of music. It's very relevant, and people like this kind of music, especially in licensing. But
yeah, I've gotten some placements with ukuleles and whistles. I think we even looked at it last month for a minute like that. It's one of those things where you're consistently going to have clients that want to convey an emotion, and ukuleles sound happy. So if you find yourself in that position, yeah, that's pretty different from what I usually record, but I've got it there. I can reach for it. I can do something with it to get that vibe when I need it. And I wanted to take some more questions. I can get into some of the stuff I do to these instruments in the back end, but hopefully you got the gist of it from showing you those finished recordings at the beginning of the class, sort of where they end up in mix.
I do have one, not necessarily relevant to acoustics or ukes, but what about electric guitars? If you mic an electric guitar, do you also treat it on the way in, or is it just the pure signal? What's your take on that whole thing? And Angelina, let me know if I got that right. Thank you.
Cool. So I've done it a few different ways. As I've talked about before, when I'm recording at the studio here, I'm always using the Kemper. So it's got the like cabinet and all that in the digital profile. But yeah, when that hits my interface, I do use a preamp chain for that as well. And I can show it to you. So let's go ahead, and if I was going to record a guitar solo, I use this chain right here, which is a slightly more famous preamp from Neve. This is like a 1073 without the EQ, so it's just got level and output, so input and output. But it really does shape the sound quite a bit. Very fun plug-in to use, and of course you can go between mic and line here to affect things differently. And then I use this Pultec EQ. Again, this is just one example, electric guitar solo. I wouldn't use this for like rhythms really, but I've got the top boosted. And this is because I recorded 100 guitar solos and added a ton of high end afterwards every time. So it's like, what I'll do is have this on so the high end gets boosted on the way in. And then later, I don't have to go through and add so much. I can sort of, again, give myself that head start. I've got a little bit attenuated or cut out on the low end, but really you can see this boost at halfway up on the high end knob here at 4K. And that's kind of the idea is like, okay, a guitar solo should really be present in those frequencies because it's competing in a heavy song with a big wall of other electric guitars and bass and stuff. When I would go to do rhythm, I usually don't add too much. Like one patch that I had was right here. So a little less input on the Neve and EQ. I'm shaping the mid-range a little bit, adding some 200 to the low mids. and then adding a little bit of high end over here at 8K, so higher end. And so this is for this is like a preset that I made that I really like with a particular Marshall amp. So that case would be going like guitar, amp, cabinet, right? So is always just record you're miking up a guitar cabinet or a combo amp. You can always record that raw and then just use plugins in post to mix it if you want to preserve that raw tone. These might not be things that you absolutely... At times, if you've got the right microphone in front of a guitar speaker, it sounds good.
You know what? I will throw something out there really quick, because I think for a lot of people who start, I'm pretty sure they are just trying to find the tone kind of there and then.
Yeah.
How much do you recommend preparing some rhythm guitar tones? You know, how much preparation do you recommend? And of course, I understand that you're creative and a lot of stuff happens in the moment, but in terms of, you know, pre-production, how much time do you put in just kind of getting some sounds?
Yeah, it's a great question. I definitely do like to take my time with it. I've mentioned before that I was like previously touring full time with this band Disciple, and then I'm still involved in doing some writing and recording. We did a live stream show a couple of weeks ago, so I'm still sort of behind the scenes in a lot of stuff with them. And so I recorded the guitars for our latest like release. It's a outboard piece of gear, but it is software driven. It profiles real amps, and I think we talked about more in previous sessions. But I used that, so that was cool. Got to you know, kind of see if I was up to snuff with where I've got my guitar sounds, and it worked. Came out really good, and the chain that I used is what I just showed you, using that Neve preamp on the way in. I don't think that I needed to use any EQ on that project, but just even having this sit there, not adding anything as far as level, you know, output at 0, the input sitting at 30 is right about like where it starts. Some of these plugins, they've done such a meticulous job emulating how it sounds if you were going through this hardware unit, even if it wasn't really doing anything to the signal. There's this color that gets added. And I honestly have no idea how they put that, but they found a way to do it. So that process for me looks like, and I can always find that session to pull up too. But for me, it looks like finding the tone I want first with the Kemper unit or the amplifier. I've been recording with a real tube amp more recently, and getting that tone, and then using the preamp to again guide it to where I want it to go. So rhythms, I'm going to try to make them sound a little bit beefier, and leads and solos, I'll try to make them sound like they cut a little bit harder. And sometimes you can get that by making those adjustments on the amplifier or your Kemper or your Axe effects, what have you. But in other situations, it really helps to be able to give that extra push in this preamp chain area. Does that answer kind of what you're getting at, Eddie?
Totally.
Andrew,
Yeah.
Does this, so I've heard it, at least, so I do mostly like recording with vocals, but obviously there's a lot of the same kind of stuff with the guitar just being audio. And so I know with vocals, I've been told like just like the signal that you're getting in the microphone and just how far and what kind of with your space in the room you're in too and all of that, but the signal you should get through your mic, that needs to be like, there's only so much you actually can do in like your, like in Logic or in Pro Tools, but that if you're not getting a good actual signal or a good sound initially, at least with, they say with like vocals, that often then in the session it's going to be difficult. Would you say that's kind of similar with guitar to like finding whatever the position of the mic for the guitar that you have or the room that you're in or something like that?
Yeah.
Similar kind of thing as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I did do a acoustic project with a really good producer a few years ago for Disciple, and we did some acoustic versions of songs that we were playing live. And that's where I got to use those little Neumann mics pointed at the 12th fret. And I was pretty blown away by that. And then also what I was learning through that process is the guitar matters and the player matters, of course. But as far as the sonics go, the microphone probably makes the biggest impact, whether it's vocals or acoustics, anything that you're capturing with that microphone, that's the most important piece. And at times, coming from the electric guitar world, it's like, okay, well, there's a bunch of good amps. So it's not like one's maybe better or more suited for my guitar. My guitar can sound pretty much like a guitar through all these amps, but your voice or the vocalist that you're recording will only sound like it's supposed to with the right match. So I would think of the microphone as being more of a match for the instrument or the singer. Like James Hetfield recorded all those great Metallica vocals all those years with a like not that cool, right? But that was the match for his really gruff and gravelly voice.
Sorry, you cut out what mic? It cut out a little bit. What mic did you say he was using?
Oh, sorry. It was like an SM57, which is an old Shure mic that you would just put in front of a guitar cab usually. It's like an instrument mic. And so all those old Metallica records have, his really cool, gruff vocals coming through that SM57. You would never in $1 million studio like grab that mic, be like, this is the one. You grab a fancy, German-made condenser mic that the Backstreet Boys used because that sounds really nice. But sometimes you get in front of, I've been in that situation too. It's like, here's a $10,000 mic, sing into this. And yes, it does sound amazing. Not the perfect match for every singer is my point. This is the mic that the singer from Disciple uses on almost everything. Eddie's got one as well.
Yeah, those are dope.
Yeah, you guys know SM7. They're made for broadcasting, but what do they have? The capsule's way down here. So if you're singing aggressively or screaming a lot, like our singer in Disciple is, this thing is not going to peak. It's not going to get overdriven because it's further away. And that's, again, really coming back to the match. It's not the nicest microphone in the world, but it might be, the perfect eHarmony match for your singer as far as what the microphone does and what their voice is doing.
eHarmony match. That's awesome. All right, guys, let's wrap it up here. Unless you guys have any other questions. What else you got? Wait, I think, Angelina, you said something. I forgot. Please chime in. She said something earlier on this.
Sure.
What's up, Angelina?
I forget. I'm too excited. Too much good information. My brain blanked.
I know. That was crazy. Especially I've never heard of anybody speak to a microphone being a match. I've never heard it in that way before. Any other questions? Let's finish it up here. All right. I think they're satiated. I think their cup is full.
Cool.
Oh wait, I remember. I'm sorry. It was the levels going in and the levels coming out. That was it.
Okay, sure. So going in, I always have on my guitar amp or Kemper the level coming in, just so I'm not peaking. Like we've got it at a nice, I've got green lights on my interface. I'm not going into yellows and reds, so I'm leaving myself some headroom. And then when I hit that preamp chain, sometimes when you're adding highs and lows, it gets a little louder, right? So you need that headroom. I'm not monitoring it in terms of the what the decibels are coming in like that. Like right now, this microphone is about as hot as I would want it to record talking, and it's hitting at -5. And so for my guitars, it's probably around -10 if I had to take a stab at it there. But again, it sort of depends case to case. If we've got a second, I'll show you really quick one of the sessions for guitars I did on that Disciple release. Like here. The Neve preamp, but there's no EQ. This is just basically the normal amplifier. So that's the Kemper sound. But on this one, the guitar in the middle, I did a bunch of stuff too, and I'll show it to you. Let me just find the preset real quick. Because these guitars in the middle, I want them to sound totally different, right? Sounds like this. But like I've shown you guys in the past, that really makes those chords pop out when you track single notes that are real heavy and mid-range. And so what I did is I'm probably getting, again, about -10 or so on the way in. But I've got, I'm adding a little bit on the input, and then right here I'm making a huge change in the mid-range so that this like 1.5K is like way up, right? And then I've got the lows cut so that this guitar does not sound like the other guitars. So that's sort of the philosophy there. So the level's different, or the levels are mostly the same coming in and out, but those approaches on how I'm treating it are way different, because I know that guitar going up the middle with the single notes is not going to serve the purpose of sounding like this big full guitar like the other one. So I can kind of do more to it without being afraid. Does that make sense?
Roger that.
Yeah. Cool. There we have it.
Well. Okay. Let's do a quick vote in the chat, or just shout it out. Any topics you would like to learn. You guys are designing the curriculum here. If there's anything that you would like to learn or know more about, let's just take a quick vote. Any ideas, suggestions?
Is this with Andrew or just in general, or what are we?
I was thinking with Andrew since he's here, but yeah, in general as well. But yeah, with Andrew specifically.
I mean,
didn't we talk about like songwriting techniques, or maybe that was another one? But I thought it was up on the list for a while.
Right, you're right. We had two. No, we had two, and we picked this one over that one last time.
Yeah.
Okay, so songwriting techniques is one. Anybody else?
I'm interested in learning about that Pultec EQ that you had up. There's like some cool tricks I've seen, like where people boost the bass and the attenuation to get like, and I've been trying to figure it out. I don't know. I mean, it's probably just an EQ, so I don't know. But for me, there's like, it just seems like you can wrap your head around that.
No, and I had a great chance to work with a hardware unit, like a vintage the Pultec, in a studio 7 or 8 years ago with another band, and I was blown away. Like when he started, because it's called Pultec because when you pull the knob out, it does something different, and software unit doesn't do that. Like they just have it in a window. But I was blown away when he'd pull that out. That's how I learned that trick with the like real mid-range heavy guitars up the middle. He would have that Pultec set up for rhythms, and then click, click, twist, and then it sounded like that. It's like, whoa, what did you just do? So I got the head start of seeing it in real life, and then got the plugin. It's like, oh, I'm going to try to make it sound that.
Just so that everybody knows, that's the vintage EQ plugin, the tube.
The blue one. It was like the navy blue with the black knobs. Yeah.
Okay.
How about the order in which you lay tracks down when you're going to put a tune together?
That's a great question, Chuck. I always start with drums, and then usually because of my background, I think drums, bass, guitars, vocals, and then somewhere in between the guitars and vocals, I'll put all the leads and solos and whatever else I've got. And then if I'm doing a track that's less of like a band thing, I'll do drums and then have any other percussion loops or virtual instruments before I get to the tracked stuff with bass and guitars, vocals.
That's interesting. You start with drums though.
Yeah.
Okay, so songwriting ideas, or what was the other one? The Pultec. Go ahead.
Yeah, kind of what Angelina said. She said, do you do edits? And I think, correct me if I'm wrong, Angelina, but I think maybe where you're getting that is to take like a guitar track and go through maybe mixing or editing parts, or is that kind of what you were thinking, Angelina?
Oh, that's a good idea too. I was just thinking about like 30 sec. I don't know if he does like 30 seconds, 15 seconds, stingers, bumpers, stuff like that. I don't know if you're just doing like full on songs, but editing guitars and stuff would be really cool too. Like fixing up the guitars or.
Absolutely. That's what I've spent a lot of my life doing the last few years. So I'd be happy to share.
Is that the most relevant, as of right now, the most relevant theme that you've heard?
Editing guitar?
Yeah.
Oh, out of this. Yeah, absolutely. And what I could do is talk about how I use the Pultec and some guitars and talk about editing them. And then we could see if there's time to talk about what I do at the end of the process.
Let's do that just because we get to grab two of these ideas. Julian, I see your idea. Let's keep it in the catalog. And just last question before we go. I just want to make sure Todd's question gets answered. Nylon strings with regular acoustic strings. Is this a good idea? Is it enough frequency differences? Thank you.
I saw that in the chat. That's an awesome question. I'm glad you asked. One thing that I learned from working at a music store for a while was that people would have these old classical guitars that their grandpa or their dad gave them, and they'd string them up with steel strings and bring them in. Why is this sound all messed up? Well, the bridge and the glue and the tuning pegs on a classical guitar are kind of put in place to deal with tension of nylon strings, which is a lot less than steel. So there is a big tonal difference, and it's an experiment. But if you've got a steel string guitar that's set up for steel strings and you want that different sound, you have to get a set. Martin makes these strings called silken steel, where it's like a wound nylon string. That will give you enough tension to put it on a steel string guitar and sound nylon. If you put regular, just classical nylon strings on a steel string, they'll slip because the posts, like on this ukulele, they have it just because it's cheaper. But these steel posts aren't really made for nylon strings to go around them, so they'll slip out a lot easier than steel strings would. On a classical guitar, which I unfortunately don't have one up here, you can tell that it's way different. The pegs run horizontal, right? They go down through the headstock. There's those like two open channels right here, and that's because the string tension is wrapping around that way, and the glue that they put on these bridge pieces can hold that. So if you put steels on a classical, you'll probably rip the bridge off or warp the top over time. And if you put nylons on a steel, there probably won't be enough tension to keep the strings on and in tune. So go for those silken steel string sets.
Very cool. All right, Todd. Hope you like that one, my friend. Oh.
I kind of meant how you can record ukulele with steel string guitar. Is it a good idea to overdub a nylon string guitar with an acoustic guitar? Are they going to just fight with each other?
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, so using them in the same session, yeah. I think there's definitely a big enough frequency difference. It depends on the part, too. If it's a higher voice, finger picking part, it's totally going to layer in differently with strummed acoustic chords, and vice versa. If you've got a finger picked sort of like classical arrangement, right, where that's like the chief thing, a steel string guitar will totally stand out in contrast. So I would experiment with it. I think there's absolutely a way to make that sound cool.
I'm going to tell my wife that you told me to buy a nylon string guitar.
Dude, I've gotten a lot of guys in trouble over the years between the music store and everything. Yeah. I've printed a lot of fake receipts.
Thank you.
Yeah, it was $80, babe.
Wow. Yeah. All right, guys. Well, let's cut it there. Blessings to everybody. Andrew, man, we value you so much. Just want to say thank you one more time. Let's give him a hand, please.
Appreciate it.
Thanks, Andrew.
Thank you.
All right, guys. Well, take good care of yourselves. Happy Wednesday. Please stay healthy, and we will catch you guys on Saturday. Please look at the brief in 1 hour. All right. Blessings. Take care. Bye.
Bye.